We are in the age, alas, of the unfunny comedian, and perhaps no one is unfunnier than Stephen Colbert. And to compensate for their lack of humor, the ability to really make people laugh or even smile, they resort to political extremism instead. And here's Stephen Colbert equating the Taliban in Afghanistan with the January 6th protesters here in America. Listen.
Why should our soldiers be fighting radicals in a civil war in Afghanistan? We've got our own on Capitol Hill.
You know, as you can see, I'm trying to laugh. But it's really hard to laugh because what you're dealing with here is just nothing more than a ridiculous political comparison. Let's think of what, if we take for a moment what Stephen Colbert is saying at face value, he seems to be implying that we are in America now in a civil war, just like they had in Afghanistan. Number two, our soldiers are fighting the wrong people. They shouldn't be fighting and killing Taliban. Why go all the way over there to do that? They should be fighting and killing Americans. We have January 6th protesters. The January 6th protesters are like the Taliban. They are maybe American Taliban. Let's kill them instead. Now, you know, it doesn't really require, I don't think, a analysis to show why this equation of the Taliban with January 6th is absurd. Well, first of all, they are radical Muslims and the January 6th protesters are not. The Taliban just did an armed overthrow of the government. The January 6th protesters were not even armed, nor did they even plan a coordinated attack, and I'm getting that straight from the FBI. For the analogy to really work, you'd have to say that when the Taliban tried to take Kabul, there was only one guy who was killed, and that was a Taliban protester trying to break through a window, shot through the neck by an American, and there were no other casualties. So you see how at every level this analogy completely implodes. But I think there's one part of the analogy, now this is going beyond Colbert's pea brain, but there's one part of the analogy that does to me ring true. And that is, I ask myself, how did the Taliban prevail? And the Taliban prevailed really by focusing on four things. One, asabiya, which is tribal unity and solidarity. Two, a clear focus on what they were trying to accomplish. Number three, a kind of ruthlessness of execution, focusing on getting the job done. And four, portraying the United States as an alien invader and essentially saying, we are not going to be an occupied people. So when I spelled those things out, I was just jotting them down. It occurred to me that to some degree, we in the United States, conservatives, are in a somewhat similar situation vis-a-vis the left. And how do we fight them? Number one, asabiya, which is to say solidarity. Our team needs to hang together, no petty divisions. Let's recognize that the opposition needs to be united to win. Number two, let's have a clear focus in identifying who the left is and how we can disrupt and defeat them. Three, ruthlessness of execution. And what this calls for is, I would call it a political guerrilla strategy. Not a military strategy, not an armed strategy, but a political strategy to disrupt the operations of the left in every which way we can. And finally, the concept of the alien invader. What we really have here is a kind of globalized elite that doesn't really care about the American people, that wants to establish here in America, establish American citizens themselves as a captive nation. So in some ways, just as the Taliban viewed America as a foreign invader, we have an alien force in America, the left, that is trying to rule over us with a tyrannical hand, using censorship, not seeking, if you will, our consent. We have that here now. So if there's some analogy between us and the Taliban, let's realize that even if sometimes outnumbered, if we hang together, focus on our goals, and hang tough, we can actually defeat this adversary.